So we were discussing astrology and its use of mathematics, or it being a certain math. There being numbers, and same thing with music. That there's numbers.
Yeah, their languages in mathematical terms. Because it's a system of predetermination and determination relative to time, past, present, forward. One is using the solar system in distances, cosmic, let's say, mathematics, algebra, and so on and so forth. Trigonometry, whatever they need to use to make their determinations relative to space and objects and just vast distances and so on. And then with music, you have vibrations relative to tone production. You have scales. So then, once again, we are talking about architecture and making what it is not just something you play, but something others can play. So the system for it was composition. So composition serves that purpose, and it's a mathematical system in a certain way. So number of notes, number of rhythms, times, and so on, and tones, so, and relationships between tones. So numbers has a lot to do with our breath, even brain waves and cosmic rays. So the quantification relative to numerical systems of consolidating the data, information, and making it available to other people for study. Astronomy. So in other words, it has no reality in itself, but for a form of knowledge so that people can use it, to know it, refer to it. I'm not sure anybody's going to change it. These are established systems that seem to be golden for the time being.
So it seems like the material, these more tangible forces can be quantified, but how about something like spirit or the soul? That's not unquantifiable.
Abstract.
More esoteric.
There may be ways of determining, like these days, the presence of spirits, right? They can be seen. They can be felt. So they are tangibilities, but in the subtle realm. So you can see a vapor. So you can hear a sound when there's nobody there. So their presence can be felt. So they are here. Spirits are here. They're living. In their domain they are living, but not necessarily physical, as we appear to be living physically. See? But they're more psychically present and etherically present. Right.
And then looking at certain musicians who play that, I would consider you to be a free, and one who plays the soul, one who plays spirit. Coltrane, another one. So that using music, using the time and the numbers, but moving beyond that.
I'm not sure what I do is really rationalized internally. It's not. It has nothing to do with music. As ordinarily conceived as a structure outside, of oneself, and or readable form of accessing it. In my case, it's just sound, and my unconscious happens to be open to creating from that, regardless of what I say, do, or attempt. So, as a reference, it just happens, and I go with it. So that's the evidence we have. Ask the musicians, you can hear it, but you ask the musicians, they'll say, well, that's the way he plays. Intuitively. I'm not saying it's a good way or better. That's the way it occurs to me. Whether I'm using references or not. So it occurs that way. I don't know if it's an advantage or not, but it's certainly a message that is, I would say practical in a manner of speaking. But it's more intuitive. So I don't have to physically play. Now I do, because I've been out of out of the music for about a year now, so now I have to use my body. I have to use more physical practice, actual, construction, reconstruction of my fingers and my technique as such. I have to do that. I have to get it up for musical playing because I've lost my momentum and stamina in terms of what I was able to play before. That has slowed down or stopped. Now I have to recreate it, regenerate it somehow. I have to get the muscles working, get the nerves working. I have to get back to it. I have to catch up with it. See, what was, I have to catch up to it. So I try to collapse the time warp now, so that I can bring it up to a level which may not be the way it's going to be in the future, but it's barely what we're talking about here. Time zones, time warps, right? Time fields, right? Time games. Right? Phenomena of time as a mental process, as an emotional process, as a physical process, as a psychic process, as an astral process, as an unconscious process, as a superconscious process, right? where the superconsciousness creates its own sense of time, so its own sense of space. In other words, it represents its own dimension when it has access to the vehicle of the musical mind.
So how can people move in that direction?
Which direction?
No time. Or the unquantifiable.
You mean no mind? If you're talking about what I'm playing, then it's no mind. Shut off your mechanical material mind, self-mind, and work on opening up the inner mind, right? The heart mind, see? The real mind, see? And one can start moving in that direction. So it's a matter of shifting emphasis from the karmic, the self, the material, to the more esoteric, sort of subtle mind, which you need to feel what that is for yourself. It means there's no self-mind. It's a theory, but it's also a state of consciousness which people have to prove to themselves. Right? Some would call it clear light mind, which is a good reference for it. It is about light, and it's clear. It's like no one standing in the way of it. Yourself has very little to do with it, if anything, because it has its own agenda, so to speak, its own force, its own reality. It is its own dimension. So that's the most important thing to say about it. It is its own dimension. So, like feeling is its own dimension. Physical is its own dimension. So memory is its own dimension. So, and the etheric level is its own dimension. Once you refine your perceptics and you care to know it and see it, to not believe it, but to experience it, and then you start to find out whether these dimensions are valid, and they are, more than curiosities. They can be of service if you venture into that realm. You can be able to be used by those planes, or use them for good.
Is time created by human perception?
Could be said that time is what we create, but the real answer is that we are created by time. Time rules. We're not limited to that, but we are created by time to function as a time being, a time machine, right? A time mind. We're wound up, let's say, by forces of time, material forces, time. And it's an abstract thing to say that there are material forces of time that use us and created the universe. And so we can also say that in certain traditions there's something called the lords of time, like time deities, right? These realities, entities, beings, right? Cosmic beings that have the control over or the responsibility to manage worlds of their own, their time worlds. This is, of course, a time world that belongs, according to the Hindu tradition, to the Kali Yuga. This is the Kali Yuga, right? Kal. So Kal is the Lord of Time, whether that's a man or a woman. Some say it's a woman, and some others say it's a man, and they have attended that man's or that deity's presence in the inner worlds, as I've had to do differently in my own case. And so they're real. They're not physical, but they're real. They're realities. They're forces. And we have yet to deal with them in a certain way. Right now, most people are pretty busy surviving, right, in their good and bad karma and having a good time of what is good in their case on Earth, and others are having a bad time in terms of what is not good in their case on Earth. As karmas more or less make available to people their happiness and their goodness, and that's time. Time is doing that. So your birth time is doing it. See, because you were born, a lot of this is being determined by your birth karma. See, family blood karma. So it's time. And every being is born at a certain time. So the forces of time, the presence of time, the rulership and the power of time is inherently operating everything here, so to speak. No proof required of that. It's just obvious. So trace back to time. Everything is in time, and everything passes out of time. And when we go to sleep, there's a suspension of our perception of time, so it seems to disappear. Because we are ultimately, as I said earlier, we are voidness. We are the mind of voidness, and it's hard for people to believe, but the soul of voidness, right? Light, clear light. It's not something we prove to anybody, but it's something you become aware of over time. You start to recognize what it is and what you are and how it works.